Hi, welcome to this overview of the Judgement hybrid heroes for patch 9, which is early 2020. So quick rundown of the hybrid heroes in Judgement. Bale and Sarna, the Goblin Bruiser and Mystic. Barnascus, the Dwarf Pyromaniac. Isabel, I'm not even going to try that, Human Paladin. Jaeger, the Goblin Hunter. Cavardo, the Human Pariah. And Piper, the Elf Illusionist Rogue. Alright, so what are some of the benefits of hybrid heroes in Judgement? They're flexible. They often have more than one kind of plan that they can do. They often combine damage with good survivability. They have generally high soul harvest scores, and they usually have some kind of utility that they bring. The downside is that they don't have a single focused role, so they're not the best at any one thing, and their attack stats in general are mediocre, good but not great. Alright, so quick overview of the aggressors by the numbers. So you can see here on their, many of them have both melee and ranged attacks. I highlighted Piper as having a poor melee score here because this is his primary attack score and all the others have a 7 in their primary attack score. Now I should have asterisked that because Piper does have an ability that lets him boost his stats that brings that up in line with the others. All of them share this 2, 3, 4 damage track. That's the most common damage track in Judgement. And again, it shows that they're not shining in the damage department, but they're just kind of average. And then defensive score-wise, there's a lot of asterisks here as well because a lot of these heroes have defensive abilities that give them extra survivability. So with Bale and Sarna, they can boost armor. With Cavardo, his level 2 boosts armor. Piper has an ability that protects him from attacks and boosts his agility. Alright, so health. There's a wide range here, ranging from Piper, who has one of the lowest healths in the game at 13, so he is particularly low in that department. Bale and Sarna, since they share a health pool and they have 10 and 8, they actually have a very high total health pool as long as they can stay together. And then in terms of soul harvest scores, most of them have 4. Sarna sits at 3, although she's actually a little bit better than she looks on paper because Bale counts towards the heroes who are helping boost her roll. So they end up being very similar. Alright, so I'm going to quick spin through the cards here. So first looking at Bale and Sarna. So I'm going to highlight some of the abilities here that I think are strong. So Groin Buster, which is a combat maneuver, 2S, and the key thing here is it makes them lose one of their actions, which is a really strong effect. Soul phase. So this one of the penalties of a unit is that they have a shared pool of 4 actions. But if you want to move around, you have to pay double because each hero has to move in spend advance actions independently. But with soul phase, you can essentially teleport them to any soul pit on the map, and that's really strong. It lets them be one of the most mobile heroes in the game. And I'm going to also highlight his level 2 Siphon Magic. This lets you steal an artifact that costs up to 1 from your opponent. It's really great. You can deny them the artifact. It's giving you an artifact. Just a really strong ability. Alright, and then I tried to highlight a total of 3 powers on both these cards, but I realized I needed to do, there's so many that I needed to do 3 for each of them. So next I'm going to highlight Mystic Aegis, which is Sarna's ability that gives Bale +1 res while they're in formation. It makes them super survivable. As long as they can stay within 3 inches of each other, that +1 res for a stat line of 5 agility, 1 res is amazing. Soul Command, being able to move a soul 4 inches, is spectacular. She can kind of fling it back for the Soul Gazer to pick up, deny it to her opponent, etc. And when you're teleporting into the active soul pit, it's just a really great ability. And finally, Mind Steal is a really fun ability where she can spend a fate to take an active ability from another model within 4 inches. Just a really fun, and it's kind of fun to think of combinations of other active abilities that she can steal and double up on. Alright, so next one I'm going to walk through is Barnascus. His combat maneuver of Hot Fire for 2 S's where he can apply the fire condition and extra true damage bumps up his damage output a lot. He has Grind that lets him, for a fate in an action, he gets to move and deal 3 true damage to enemies within an inch. So that move and damage at the same time is a really great utility. And also his ability to repair himself makes him very survivable and independent. Alright, so next up, Isabel. What I'm going to highlight on her cards are Smite, so that extra true damage just bumps up her damage and makes her a really good kind of damaging hero. She also has her healing ability of Lay on Hands, where she's handing out 3 health +1 for each level that she's gained. And then also her ability to mass remove conditions is also really strong. She has 2 different level up tracks, and they also have more strong abilities, so she has a lot of great utility. All right, so next up, Jaeger. So he has some really unique abilities. Strip Soul, there's only 3 heroes in the game right now that can remove souls from enemies, and he's one of them. And the other 2 are Soul Gazers, so it's a really strong ability to be able to strip off those souls. Next one, Rotarius, being able to, it's throwing a net on your opponent and reduces their agility, which is just a really synergistic ability that kind of helps all of your other heroes attack. And then finally, his level 3 ability is uniquely good. Marksman, being able to move and still gain the aiming bonus, and also reducing the target's res by 1. And there's no cost to this; it's just always on once he hits level 3. All right, so next up, Cavardo. So he has some really great active abilities. Mind Control lets a friendly model make a basic attack. So this is really strong when you're combining it with your aggressors who have strong attacks, or someone like Thrommel, someone like Zaffin who have 2 action attacks are valid for this power. So that's a really strong combo. And then Telekinesis, spend a fate in an action to place an enemy model within 4 inches, up to 5 inches. So you can use this to move enemy heroes into monsters, monsters into heroes. Just move people away from shrines. This is a really strong kind of signature ability for him. And then his level 2 ability, where he gets +1 res, that kind of beefs up his survivability and makes him so that he can be a good kind of secondary tank. All right, and finally Piper. So Piper has Backstab, which gives him +1 on damage as long as the enemy is engaged by a friendly model. So this might seem like a small bonus, but it really beefs up his damage and turns him into a really, like aggressor level damage. So as long as you can meet that condition of being engaged by a friendly model. Next up, his Duplicate Self, the ability to ignore an enemy basic attack, especially if that can be a charge. That's a really big effect. And then finally, spending a fate to bump up his stats with Enhanced Self is a really strong ability. And I didn't even touch on Mystic Step, where he can place within 2 inches, and combine that with his Pathfinder and his high movement score of 5 makes Piper a really mobile hero. All right, so I'm just going to do some comparison of the different hybrids. So one thing is, I said kind of what's their secondary, or what's the role that they might be considered closest to. So I said that Bale and Sarna, for me, I play them a lot like a Soul Gazer, where Sarna's often moving around and picking up souls, so I chose Soul Gazer. Piper and Barnascus, because they're very damaging, could be kind of considered close to aggressors. And then Isabel, Jaeger, and Cavardo, because of their synergistic abilities, I said their closest role was supporter. All right, and then are they tough? I think in particular here, Jaeger and Piper are not. Piper has some good defensive abilities, but I think calling him tough is a bit of a stretch. Next up, are they fate hungry? So I said here, my definition of fate hungry is if they really want to fate each turn to be at their best, I would call them fate hungry. So I think Cavardo with his teleport ability really wants to use fate every turn, and Piper as well with his Enhanced Self. And then finally, are they item hungry? So I think Bale and Sarna are, although they have that ability to steal an item, which helps a little bit with the fate cost. And then Jaeger, he loves the Heartseeker. And then finally Piper, Piper has a relatively low melee score, so he's delighted to get that Vorpal Blade to bump up his damage. All right, so this is my overview of the Judgment Hybrid Heroes. It's brought to you by Wartable.online, where you can go play Judgment for free. I'd love to hear your feedback about how I presented these heroes, or any tips and tricks you have for playing them at their best.